Hi and welcome to this week's The Counter Narrative. My name's Richard Willett. This is the antidote to woke. This week I want to speak about, in of itself, the Mar-a-Lago raid of Donald Trump's premises by the FBI. Apparently they found 300 documents that shouldn't be there, and apparently they weren't as secure as they should be. What I really want to speak about is the polarization of his entire presidency and why I believe he's been put there, and why it's kind of dangerous to think of him as some sort of Pied Piper for the common man and some sort of saviour, which I believe he's being set up and propped up to be, as he will run again, I believe, in a couple of years' time. And this is happening in the UK with Boris Johnson and all over the world. The same thing, the same polarisation of what you do and you don't believe in. Everything's politicised now. So what I believe is happening is there's kind of like a pincer movement towards this new world order of things. We see the economic system collapsing and being destructive purposely in front of us. So this pincer movement has on the left, which is really the fascist right, but they've satanically inverted it now. On the left you have the Joe Bidens of the world, you have the Boris Johnsons of the World Economic Forum. They're pushing this technocracy, they're pushing the climate change agenda, they're pushing the Rona, they were pushing the transgender agenda, Black Lives Matter, that sort of George Soros funding with Extinction Rebellion. This is all over on the left side, the woke side of things, the progressive side, which is really progressive hiding what is actually ultimately fascism, and again it's inverted. On the right side here you have what is supposed to be Donald Trump, and that side of things pushing against the establishment, the anti-establishment, but he is anything but. He was born into the establishment, into these bloodlines and into the swamp. He has connections that go back to the FBI a long way back as well, and the CIA and all these other three-letter associations. So what they're kind of using him as a kind of messiah to come along and push back against this establishment. But when you look at some of the things I'm going to go through today, you'll realise that he's just as much establishment as anybody else. He's swimming in there. Although I will say in his defence, I believe he's now a pain in their arse, and they probably wish they hadn't have brought him in as close as they do. He doesn't like being told what to do by the looks of it. He's a bit of a rogue and goes off on his own. But ultimately, these bloodlines and this agenda goes back thousands of years to Babylon, Mesopotamia, Sumer, and probably all the way back to Atlantis, if you believe these places existed, to the mystery schools, to the pagan religions. And this is something that's played out over thousands of years, and there is a bloodline element to it, which I'll get to later. So let's have a look at what happened to Trump over the last few weeks. So on the 9th of August, Trump's home was raided by the FBI. They claim to have found around 300 classified documents at his home. It is claimed that the agents were investigating a potential violation of the Espionage Act. Now, we saw all the nonsense about him and Russia, including with Russia, and that was clearly a load of horseshit and didn't come to anything. It seems like they're doing the same play here as well. You've had all of these lefty wokes running around crowing how he's going to get 5 years for each document, which is utterly absurd, of course, but they're crowing at the moment, not understanding that this is all likely just theatre for the masses anyway, and at the very top these same families do what these bloodlines tell them to do. So one of the things that was quite obvious from the start is they put the person that came up with the warrant was a Florida judge who was connected to Jeffrey Epstein. If you're going to find a judge, why find one that's clearly and easily connected to Jeffrey Epstein, unless you wanted an out later on or to undermine the investigation completely? I believe that's done on purpose. Obviously they could have found anyone, but to have a guy that who signed off the FBI raid on Trump's mansion, he represented Jeffrey Epstein's workers, the Daily Mail revealed on the 9th of August. So I mean, that was the day of the raid by the looks of it. They revealed it, so they're undermining it already, which is quite clear. So his name is Bruce Reinhardt. He acted for several employees of the billionaire paedophile Epstein before he sanctioned the unannounced search of Mar-a-Lago. So why would you do that unless you wanted to undermine the whole setup of it, the whole investigation anyway? So they found over 300 documents with classified information, and they've retrieved them from the Mar-a-Lago premises, according to the New York Times. An investigation are reporting now seeking investigators are reporting that are now So this year, in total, over 300 documents with classified information has been retrieved from the Mar-a-Lago According to the New York Times, investigators are reportedly now seeking additional surveillance footage from the resort, although they won't release it. Apparently, the Trump's people won't release it, whether that's true or not. I don't know. The Judge Department also reportedly believed the classified material was not being securely stored based on the Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage they'd seen. So it seems like the problem isn't that he got them so much that they weren't secure. And if they were able to break in and nick it, because he had it lying around in his pants drawer, then that's the charge, that it could have fallen into enemy hands. Other than him actually having it, because Obama reportedly had a load of these documents at one point as well, so refused to give them back. So this is all just theatre for the masses. So why do I believe that Trump is not the person to get behind? Why is he not the Messiah? A lot of this stuff doesn't get spoken about often enough, other than through the alternative media, but the first one that pops up is the connection to the Rothschilds. So in the early 1990s, Donald Trump was in a huge amount of debt. Trump made a bold bet on Atlantic City when he opened a third casino there, the colossal Taj Mahal, in April 1990. Even riskier, he financed the project with $675 million in junk bonds at a 14% interest rate. Within months, Trump was struggling to make the massive bond payments as Atlantic City floundered. He was bailed out by Wilbur Ross. Now, Wilbur Ross at the time was the head of bankruptcy for the Rothschild Bank. It's a centralised bank. It's a privately owned bank. They have central banks everywhere in the world now. Now, the Rothschilds are a bloodline family. Everybody knows about the Rothschilds. They're one of the more well-known, alongside the Rockefellers, of the bloodline families. So Wilbur Ross, their head of bankruptcy, bailed Trump out in the early 1990s. So from then, Trump was owned by the Rothschilds. So to say that he's anti-establishment and anti the banking system is absurd. The only people that get to be president are the people that are going along with that. Certainly since JFK, I think it was JFK, tried to print his own money. So boycotting and jumping over the federal, the private banks, and they took him out. And I believe the other one was Lincoln, who tried to print greenbacks, and they did the same to him, of course. So anyone who tries to go beyond the financial establishment will be taken care of. So to say Trump's anti-establishment when he's been bailed out by the Rothschilds in the early 1990s is totally absurd to me. And this is why you saw him pushing the Christian Zionist agenda through the evangelical churches during his presidency. So Zionism is the political movement and the political arm of the Rothschilds, but it's really the political movement. It's just a weapon or a tool within the kit of these bloodlines and the establishment. This was given to them after, I believe, they brought the US into the war, and that was their reward for doing so, and they were given the land that is now Israel. And this is all to do with prophecies and the Book of Revelations and the Middle East, Jerusalem, Solomon's Temple, and that part of things. And that's still going on now on the other side, and that goes behind the evangelical church. Behind what Trump's doing is the push towards a new world religion, a one world religion. On the other side, you have the technocracy, and eventually I believe that'll all come together, as is the Pincer Movement that I'm talking about. During his presidency, Trump also gave Israel everything it asked for, including moving the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and even recognising Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Now, that's obviously Palestine and Israel have fought over this holy land for a very long time, and that's why that was done. Trump is very much in the pocket of the Rothschilds and the bloodlines, and it's clear as day there, moving the US embassy right in the middle there and declaring Jerusalem as Israel's capital, when it's obviously also Palestine's capital. This is where they want to build Solomon's Temple, on Temple Mount. Let's have a look what else. So the FBI connection, there's a connection there that's quite obvious. It was a very interesting connection to find out that Nikola Tesla, obviously most people know the name Tesla through Elon Musk, who's completely butchering it at the moment. Nikola Tesla, he died. He's the famous inventor. He clearly found free energy. He died destitute in a New York hotel in 1943. The FBI called on none other than Donald Trump's uncle, Professor John J. Trump, to look over the papers and the Black Book, which was taken from his hotel room before his nephew was able to get, before Tesla's nephew was able to get there, and also the body was removed and moved too. So all of this documentation was taken away, including this Black Book. And the technology that he was supposed to have there, they said that he had, they were hiding it or getting rid of it because he had nuclear technology. There's no evidence to say that at all. One of the technologies I believe that he had to something called the Yellow Book. The Yellow Book was, it seemed to be something you could see into the future. So this technology, you would open it up, and when it would open up like a Yellow Book, and it would have a hologram of what your future would be, pertaining to how you were feeling and thinking at the time. It would show you the outcomes of your future, how many years you wanted to go in advance. This Yellow Book technology has been spoken about quite a lot through other kind of conspiracy research. I believe this technology was what they were looking for when they went into Iraq in 2003 and ransacked the museums there. A lot of that technology, including, I believe, Stargate technology, was available there. So the FBI connection with the Trumps has been there for a long time. So to say that the FBI are raiding Trump and then they're against him, I don't believe that for a second. I believe this is still theatre for the masses. The World Economic Forum, Ivanka Trump and her Zionist husband Jared Kushner attended the World Economic Forum in 2020. That doesn't say any more than that. They could have just attended it, but there's clearly a connection with the World Economic Forum there. And Bill Gates came out and spoke out and said he advised Trump not to look into the adverse reactions even to jabs. I think he had a little pop at Robert Kennedy in there as well. But Trump, during his presidency, when the whole Rona thing kicked off, it was looked on the surface like he took the money away from the World Health Organization, a Gates organization, and it looked like he was defunding them. But what he was actually doing was taking that money and rerouting it around the back to Gavi, also a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So he was taking it out of one pocket and shoving it in the other. But it looked politically very good for him at the time, but he wasn't defunding Gates. Gates was being shown to be the psychopath that he clearly is at that time. He's very much attached to the swamp, especially the connection to the Rothschilds and the fact that he owes them money. That is the biggest one for me that shows where his allegiance is at, and everything that he's done for Zionism in the Middle East as well. It clearly shows that he's using the evangelical church and the Republicans as a way of pushing this agenda. So just briefly on Trump's funding. So Trump was funded into the presidency by $300 million from elite Sheldon Adelson, as well as funding from Robert Mercer, who's a leading name and a leading figure in artificial intelligence, and Steve Bannon. Cambridge Analytica obviously had a lot to do with getting Trump into the presidency at the first place, and we saw that coming out with the Facebook thing a few years back as well. So he's had help getting there, and these people expect things in return. So along with the Rothschilds, Adelson, and other people he's connected through the mega group, he clearly is only a cog in the system. So as Charlie Robinson, my mate, puts it in his book, it's a controlled demolition of the United States of America. I believe it's a controlled demolition of the economic world all over, and they want to bring in the Chinese-like system they incubated there and bring it over to the West. That's basically what we're looking at. The likes of Biden and Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and Boris Johnson are openly doing it. They needed to give us someone to hold on to and put up the front as our saviour type, and they're giving us Trump of all people, but it's very easy to see that he's just as much involved with these people as anybody else, and that's why I believe this is a pincer movement. On the left, which really behind it is the right fascists, but on the left, the woke left, pushing the technocracy, they're pushing the climate change scam, the surveillance state, and everything that comes with China, the social credit system, the cashless society, all on that side. And on this side we have Trump, but behind the evangelical church, and what is known as the Rockefellers' Great Transition, as opposed to the Great Reset. So you've got the Great Reset on that side, the Great Transition on this side with Trump, where they're bringing about a global religion, or one world religion. So one world army, one world police surveillance state, and one world religion, one world government. That's basically what is going on. But you've got a pincer movement here. So they appear to be opposing each other, but what they're doing is squeezing the world forward bit by bit in a certain direction, and that's what I believe Trump is doing. So eventually you're going to have two polar opposite societies. You're going to have the people that want to go into the pod. They want to go into the Matrix world, the Brave New World, the technocracy of the left. They're happy to go in there because it's comfortable. And you'll have others on the right, and they're trying to get the conspiracy community, if that's what you want to call it, to go across to that side for Trump, against the elite. And you would be living outside of that system, but you'll be in a system, sort of like a catch system itself, where you would be living more off the land, and you'll have more freedoms, but you'll have no comfortability in terms of what you would have if you were in the pod. And that is basically Brave New World. That's basically what they want to be able to sort of set up, and they're dividing people politically on every little thing. So if you support Biden, you also believe in the climate change hoax that came from the Earth Summit, Agenda 21, and the fact that humanity is the greatest threat to humanity itself. That's what they want you to believe. But so is the other side, who want you to believe that you have to believe in Solomon's temple and all of this religious stuff if you want to go to heaven and be rewarded with 1,000 years with the new Messiah. You'll be left with these decisions at the end. You will either have responsibility, and that will come with some freedom, so you'll be totally responsible for keeping yourself alive, but the freedom to do so as best you can with the little resources you've got, or you will have total comfort, but the cost of that will be complete compliance, this social compliance system. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a few things about Donald Trump. I don't believe he's particularly evil or a bad person in the sense. He's brought up in this world. These people are brought up in the swamp, and they're used to functioning like this. This is how their world works. So guys, please remember to like, share and subscribe, and I hope you got a lot from this as well. Remember, I think that Trump is probably a pain in their ass, but he's definitely not the Messiah, and he's probably just a very naughty boy.